How you doing today, Anya?
What did you say? Sorry, I
So how are
heard
you
the
doing today?
recording. Oh,
How
I'm
are you doing
doing
today?
very well. Thank you.
Excellent. It's good to
I'm
see
doing good.
you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for having me.
Welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah, so we can start off by letting the people know who you are, what you do, and why you do it, Anya.
Hmm. Yeah, so well, my name's Anya. Um, I who I am is a large question to answer. I'm a Swedish American currently living in Sweden. I'm quirky. That is the best descriptor of me as a human.
Nice.
Um, I am also a sex and relationship coach. And so I help people with all their problems related to sex and intimacy and relationships.
Mhm.
And I do what I do. I don't know if you, well, I do what I do because I love working with humans. And I think sex and relationships is a really challenging landscape to navigate. I know I've had my fair share of struggles and still sometimes have my fair share of struggles. And it's really nice having support sometimes. And especially, I find we're in a society very detached from our feelings often and very detached from what we actually want. That's always, there's a lot of societal pressure telling us how we should live our lives and what we should do. And like
Mm.
my mission in life is to help people decide what works for them and live the life that works for them
Right.
outside of what society tells them. And maybe it is following what society wants, or maybe you're choosing to follow societal norms because it's easier to fit in. But I really want people to make that decision for themselves and
Sure.
to listen to their internal voice.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Yeah, so like all of us, like we all have had struggles in previous relationships and past relationships. What would you say some of your struggles have been in previous relationships, and how did you navigate through that?
I'm thinking of where to start. I've had many struggles in previous relationships. I think the biggest struggle is I was always told growing up, and it's a voice that still comes up. And I won't say I'm perfect at navigating the struggle, but it's gotten a whole lot easier.
Right.
But it's being told I'm too much, or that if I keep being difficult, no one will ever love me, or people will leave me. And I was told this from like 5 years old. So it's so inherent in who I am, thinking that no one will love me if they get to know the true me, or if I get triggered, or if I get mad. So what's been a struggle is either when I got mad, I would shut down and I would withdraw from a relationship, or I wouldn't be able to get mad. I just get sad. Or if I got mad, I felt so unlovable that I would hyper escalate and like panic and withdraw that way and get really, really sad. So it wasn't ever that my triggers were like a normal thing because I thought being triggered meant not being loved. And I
Mm.
just to touch on a little bit is like I have accepted that I get triggered. I realize that I'm never going to work through every single trigger, but I can adjust how I react to it.
Mm.
So maybe instead of trying to explain everything that's going on, I step out of the room. It sounds so easy, but it's taken me to now to even like, oh, I can just go outside, like I don't need to deal with this right now. So it's yeah, that's probably the number one thing. And I think that's where like anxiety for me has stepped into, or avoidance. Like I think
Okay.
I can go either way.
Okay.
Or yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
So
probably the biggest issue that I have experienced. And actually one other thing. Can I
yeah,
say
yeah,
one
go
other
ahead.
thing? I know you I will talk about like sexuality too, because that like I think that is so much of why I do the work that I do. I didn't
Mhm.
give the whole intro story that I usually give, but like for me, I was so incredibly disconnected from my sexuality. I didn't know the first thing about like women's pleasure. I didn't know that my body was capable of having pleasure, and I experienced a lot of trauma early on in my sexual slash dating life. And I think that's been another big thing. And that one I feel like I have maybe I will go back, but I feel like I feel very attached to my body and my sexuality, which has made dating so much easier and to be in healthy, respectful relationships, which I wasn't in the past.
Yeah. Okay. So when you mentioned earlier, like getting triggered by people that were not accepting you and calling you too much, what are the things in particular that used to make you feel triggered, would you say?
um yeah, I mean, I getting it called too much, yes, that's triggering, but I don't think that was the reaction.
Mm.
It was that would make my trigger worse
Okay.
instead of being able to calmly accept it. But things I find triggering, and they're small things, it doesn't need to be, but when someone says they'll do something and don't do it, like I grew up with that. And I believe that our triggers, usually if we have a abnormal response to trigger, if something little happens and we get really triggered, I believe it stems from our childhood. And like, for example, someone doing something and not doing it. I
Mm.
grew up with family who would tell me all the time that they do it and never did it. So I was just used to like things not working. And so that for me is triggering to a point where for maybe someone who didn't grow up with, don't want to say irresponsible family, but to some degree a family who doesn't follow through, like it probably isn't as triggering. I don't know if that makes
No, no,
sense.
that makes sense. Yeah. So like, would you say that was connected to having expectations of people doing what they say they would do, like your expectations of others was kind of connected to you being triggered in that way?
I mean, I still get triggered. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I believe that a solution isn't from, I think we can trigger map and try to avoid triggering situations. And I think how we handle a trigger can change, but I think those core feelings that stem from childhood will continue to trigger us. And maybe we can handle it better, or maybe we can avoid that situation. But I just want to say that as the basis. I can talk about how expectations have, I have worked with expectations,
Okay.
and I don't think I'm going to answer it related to that. I think some expectations are healthy in a relationship.
Okay.
Um, and maybe not expectations, but I think, let me take that back. Maybe not expectations, but like you have needs and someone can fulfill those or someone can't fulfill those. And if someone's not fulfilling those, then you can decide yourself whether to ask for them to be fulfilled or whether to leave or whether to
Right.
outsource. And I'm going to go to a relationship that I've had to talk about expectations. Does that feel okay for you? Because I
Yeah, yeah.
think I can answer it more
Yeah. Go
directly
ahead.
in another form. But I in 2022, I was dating a guy long distance. We met traveling and I was living abroad in Spain. I was studying there. And this guy was amazing for so many things and showed me unconditional love, but he was never going to be able to show up for me as a stable boyfriend. And I so expected him to show up as a stable boyfriend or to show up as someone that I could that could be there when I wanted him to be there, or that would be know where he was in a week. But he was a full-time traveler, and I was like, I expected something from him that he's just not.
Mm.
And how I do it in my practice now, and what I had to do then was facing the disappointment. It's like, he's never gonna change. Like this is who the human he is.
Right.
And I think we get so stuck on hope. It's like we think people are going to change, and I with my family or whatever, and I try to change, like I try to react so people will change, or I try to do this, or I try to ask. And it's like once you realize that people aren't going to change, I now have a beautiful relationship with this person. It's not necessarily romantic, but I feel like it's one of the people I get the most unconditional love in my life from. And I feel very, very fulfilled, but it wasn't what I was expecting it to be. And I was so angry and so confused and sad. But I was expecting someone to be a person they're never going to be.
Right, right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And once we come to that realization, it can help our relationships a lot more going forward as well, you know. Yeah. So in the context of human nature, you know, like we go out, we see different people and we get attracted to different people all the time, right? We see people that attract us. So what is your viewpoint on different relationship styles in terms of monogamy versus non-monogamy in the context of human nature and the fact that we get attracted to people all the time?
I believe people can choose whatever relationship style that they works for them.
Mm,
I I feel a little exhausted by if like non-monogamous people being like this is the way that human nature is and we should all be doing it because there's lots of people who are very happy in monogamous relationships and
right.
probably non-monogamy doesn't fit for those people, and then there's people who are always triggered in non-monogamy or always triggered in non-monogamy. um and I think for some people their relationship style is an identity. For me it's not. I have dated a married couple for 2-ish years on and off, and I was very content. I've also been monogamous
Hmm.
and I've been polyamorous, which many people are in open relationships. So for me, it's what works for my needs. Um, However, I will say I think every relationship, whether monogamous or in an alternative relationship structure of some sort, needs to be negotiated. I think the problem with monogamy is especially in some polyamory is the boundaries of a relationship aren't negotiated. So I I recently started seeing someone and we're talking, are you monogamous or not monogamous? I was like, well, I think I could be monogamous to bring it to myself. But like there's things that I'm gonna do, like my work, I'm in erotic connection with people, clothed, but still like I am in connection with people. I flirt with people. I go to shibari. I'm not gonna stop doing that. And so for some people that would not be monogamy, but for me, I'd consider that monogamy. And so I think negotiating whatever works for you in the moment, and it can shift,
Hmm.
is how I look at it. So I have no prejudice against any form of relationship structure, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so basically being ethical about it and being upfront and honest about how you feel and who you are and how you want to move forward with the relationship. Would that be accurate to what you're trying to say?
I think what I'm trying to say is listen to yourself.
Hmm.
You know, society has so many fucking opinions about how you should live your relationship or do. And like, and you're also not like, once you've made a decision, it can change. You can be polyamorous. I've been polyamorous for the past 5 years, you know, like, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm open to shifting, but I don't need to, you know, or maybe you've been monogamous for 20 years and want to open up your relationship. It's like, what feels good for you if you think about separating what society expects from you? And I think that is mine. Like, ideally, you're as open and honest as you can be with your partner or
Right.
partners.
Yeah, and finding people that resonate with that, um,
Yeah.
with who you are and you with them as well. Yeah, yeah, excellent,
Yes.
excellent. Yeah. So, you know, I coach men and women, and a lot of the women I coach say that they have anxiety within relationships and towards relationships. And men I coach, their anxiety tends to affect their confidence towards dating. So, what would you say some of the causes are of people's anxiety within dating and relationships?
I think the causes, I think we can go into all the different triggers of anxiety or not. And I also want to be very careful talking about anxiety in terms of anxious attachment or avoidant attachment, because I think there's so much shame and stigma. And I really push back against literature on these things. But anxiety, I think it often stems from our childhood. And like for me, I can talk about, like, for example, it stemmed from growing up being told I'm not enough and people will leave me, or told I'm too difficult, or for my clients, it's like they're wanting to be really close and really scared someone's going to leave or not. But I think, and anxiety can stem from so many different places. And I think, I guess what I just want to say, and I don't know, I think it stems from childhood. That is the short answer. Or it stems from a partner. It, sometimes being avoidant can also trigger anxiety, especially like if you're with a more secure person and who shows you unconditional love all the time, it's easier. But if you're with a person who wants to have distance and you're really wanting to be close, it's harder. I don't think it's an impossible relationship to be in, but like anxiety is a normal part of relationships. And I guess that, and I don't think it's a part we need to avoid or try to fix. It's more like, how do we cope with anxiety, or how do we map where our anxiety is? And we can set up ways to avoid those triggers. But those are two very different strategies. I don't know if I
Yeah.
answered your
No,
question.
no, okay. So you're saying basically from past experiences will cause people to have anxiety in their current or future relationships. But do you think there's a way, because you mentioned coping with anxiety, do you think there's a way to actually overcome and detach from anxiety, or is it just something that needs to be coped with?
I think all the literature that I have read on, let's talk about anxious attachments
Okay.
in literature terms. I think that really pushes people to be like, okay, you can overcome anxious attachment. And I think it's shown like, yes, you can, but also most people don't. And so I think it's really stigmatizing for a lot of people. And like, it can take people a long time to feel comfortable in a relationship. So especially in the beginning of a relationship. And I think I want to refer to Jack Morin, I think, who wrote The Erotic Mind. And he's like, the beginning of a relationship, anxiety often is inherent because you don't know if the person's going to like you or not. Like, it is scary. So I don't like to work from a point where I'm trying to solve someone or telling them that they're not lovable as they are right now. I want to make people's lives easier. And people who are anxiously attached feel so much fucking shame about being anxiously attached. People think they're unlovable, too much, not worthy. And I think telling people that they have anxiety on top of that makes their anxiety worse because that is what they're anxious about. So I don't try to focus there. I think people can get tools on how to navigate anxiety, the breath tools, or asking for validation, or asking for your needs, or finding your needs other places. For some people who are really anxious, maybe going straight into a monogamous relationship first few weeks becoming monogamous or committed isn't the way to go. Maybe you need to be dating more people through that anxious attachment stage if you're wanting to get monogamous, or maybe you never go monogamous. I don't know.
Right.
But whatever works for you where you can keep stable. But I think, and then also choosing a partner or partners where you feel more secure with, or maybe you're into avoidant people. There's a lot of people who are only attracted to more avoidant leaning partners. And that's beautiful. I want to say, like, avoidant people are just, or people with more avoidant tendencies are just as lovable. And a lot of people are erotically attracted, but how can you meet those other needs that you're having outside of the relationship
Mm,
in
yeah,
that case?
yeah, excellent. So, speaking about attachments, when some people get into a new relationship, they very excited about this new relationship. There's a lot of chemistry, there's a lot of butterflies that they're feeling, and they're very getting attached and immersed into the relationship, and that could cause some people to start to lose a sense of self. So, how can people that are getting into a new relationship and getting immersed into this new relationship, at the same time, not lose their sense of self within that?
My first answer is it so depends on the individual. I think I'm very hesitant to give advice.
Mm.
But
Or like,
there's many ways.
yeah. Go ahead.
And like, for example, keeping your options open, not going too fast into one relationship, maybe keeping other people who are you're interested in dating is if it feels right for you, not
Let's say they've actually found someone that they want to, they're monogamous, right? And they found someone that they want to be with, and it's the beginning of the relationship. So they're kind of getting immersed into that already, but at the same time, not wanting to lose their sense of self, and they feel that happening. Like, what can be done in that situation, in your opinion?
yeah. First, I just want to validate people how freaking hard it is to navigate all those emotions of going through at the beginning of a relationship.
Mm,
It's so much love, and you're also wanting to spend all your time with them. It's so exciting, and it often feels so good. And when you're apart, it can trigger anxiety. And so, like, I first just want to normalize that experience fully, and that it's pretty universal. And so anything I say, maybe people won't do, but I think it's really important to keep doing the activities that you love, maybe not spending every single evening with your partner or
mhm.
every time. And it's also is so hard and it might feel uncomfortable or not as fun to be with them. But in the long term, let's say after you lose that new relationship energy, usually after 2 years, sometimes earlier, sometimes later, like you have friends still to fall back on. You still have a life. I know when I was dating someone and I lost my sense of self, I didn't feel like I had a life. I didn't feel like I had anyone to turn to because all my life was about that person. We shared every hobby. And
Yeah.
that's the loneliest that I've ever felt in my life. And I was in a very loving relationship. So I think it's really important to the best degree that you can to maintain some sense of your own life, whether it's getting drinks with a friend once a week or whether it is going to running practice or salsa or whatever. Just
Right.
keep a couple hobbies separate from your partner.
Exactly. No, I agree with that a lot. Like staying in touch with your passions and not getting rid of that just because of one individual who, before you met them, you were a person. So, like the passions that you had before that, to keep in touch with those things and keep developing yourself as a person. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree with what you said there. Yeah. So,
There's
yeah, go
I
ahead.
I realize there's one other thing I want to add to this. I
Mm.
think it's an important part. I think we really have the fairy tale within us from love movies or love movies, romantic comedies or romantic movies that like when we find the one, you're going to want to spend all your time that should fulfill every single need. And I think it's Esther Perel who writes like we expect our partner to fulfill what a village used to provide. And I don't remember exactly, but like a friend, a partner, a economic provider, sexual partner, a but like so many different things in one person where we usually used to rely on more people. And I think this fairy tale that we believe often pushes people to feel guilty taking time for themselves. And I remember I had a friend who became basically lost all her friends because she became so obsessed with her boyfriend. And she looked at me, she's like, I just feel really guilty when I'm not hanging out with him, like I'm doing something wrong. And I think that is an experience a lot of people have. Like, if we're not spending all the time we have with our partner or that they want to spend with us,
Mhm.
that we're not fulfilling our end of this fairy tale.
Right, right.
And it's kind of yes. I think the
Yeah.
more we can separate ourselves from the fairy tale, the better. But that's another layer that adds to the difficulty of taking space because it's not celebrated to take space.
Yeah. So like, like reality is a very different thing from fairy tales. And in reality, we do need to have a sense of like self and not be overly attached in that kind of way. Yeah. So, previous to dating apps, everybody used to meet in person, talk in person, but then dating apps became very popular, and people have become accustomed to dating apps. But if you went to an event and a man approached you and let you know that he was interested in you, versus if you got a message on a dating app and a man sent you a message letting you know he was interested in you, which one would be more impactful and memorable to you?
I think that's it. I use dating apps. I date in person. I do whatever. I'm not on dating apps right now, but like I it's a hard one to answer. I think sometimes people like it's nicer when someone comes up to you, but it can also be a lot of pressure and sometimes it's a lot. Um I get asked out a lot in the week. So like for me, like I don't mind, but I don't know if it can feel hard for other people. Um
But in terms of
I
yourself, like
guess
what, yeah, what would you say is more
I guess
impactful, like memorable?
I guess I like for people if people ask me, I yes, being asked out in person is more memorable. I mean, physical contact or not even physical, shared space with people is more memorable. I think if you ask someone out in person, I think it's really important to know them as a human or to like have a few minutes of a conversation where you know you vibe or not. Like I notice when someone's extremely into me, I went to an event the week, a mindfulness event, and I could tell the facilitator was into me within like I swear like a minute of getting there, you know, just the energy. And I feel like that's a nice energy, but it makes me feel like, oh, they're just wanting to fuck me. You know,
Mhm.
like I am only viewed for my looks. I want to be viewed as a whole person. Like I want to. And so what's really memorable for me is like someone having a conversation with me, is someone enjoying getting to know me, interested in who I am, what I do. Like that's hot. Often I ask people out after that because I'm like, oh, this person actually cares about me and this person's interesting, you know? Like I'll be like, do you want to get a coffee? I'm unique. I'm very forward as a woman, but like I think in that sense, like it would feel really good and memorable. Whereas someone who I've never had a conversation with, and we say, and they just walk up to me and ask me on the street, they're like, oh, what are you doing tonight? It's like, ah, like that makes me feel unsafe.
Right, right, right,
And
right.
so I guess the tip within that is if you're asking people out in person, just have a 3 minute conversation with them
Right, right.
before you ask.
Yeah, yeah. So like would you say that it's easier for you to be able to discern if someone's being genuine with you in real life as opposed to on an app, or does it not make a difference?
I I can't compare. I think where what you're trying to get at is if apps or real life is better.
Mm.
Um, and I'm gonna answer that directly. I think apps are really fucking hard for men. Like statistically, apps are really, really challenging. I think apps are also a very effective way to meet people done the right way.
Mm.
I have dated lots of people and had very healthy relationships off of dating apps. They're very exhausting, and you don't know if people are being genuine or not. I think I don't have more than a couple texts off of a dating app. Then I'm like, do you want to hop on the phone or do you want to grab a coffee for 30 minutes? I make very quick, easy dates because I don't learn anything from a text from a dating app. I think that like there is no impact for me. The impact is grabbing coffee with someone or popping on the phone with someone and having a 30-minute conversation. Like for me, that is the impact that a dating app can have.
Right.
Um, and whether a coffee of someone with it from a dating app or a coffee with someone that I met on street doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. So like it doesn't become impactful until it becomes real. Like you said, once you want to grab a coffee, that's when you start feeling the impact of the person. Like when it's a more real life situation for you, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
Excellent.
I will say, I've had people feel like they really care over dating apps too, genuinely ask questions. I would say that's often over voice messages or like I feel have felt cared for and people being interested in the person I am over a dating app. But yeah, I think it's possible.
Yeah. Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, Anya, like it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find you and contact you and find out more about you?
Yeah, so where to start? I have a website that's pleasurepleasecoaching.com. And then I have an Instagram page, pleasure period please period coaching. Um, yeah, those are probably the two easiest ways. And they're my emails and contact information and phone number are too.
Excellent. And for the viewers, all of that information will be in the description for you to contact Anya. Anya, once again, thank you so much for coming on, and it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Take care now.